We are getting close to it. Almost time for the craziness. Meeting people. Morning, Joseph. Morning, Jill. Happy birthday. Woman's dedicated to insurance. She's here on her birthday. We're going to talk about HSAs today, which, so much fun to talk about. There's often confusion with HSAs, including agents. In fact, I learned something new a couple months ago from somebody on Marketplace Mastery, I think, Facebook group. So I thought, yep, this is time to discuss this. It comes up on our intake form we have, would you like an HSA? And it's amazing how many people will click that button and then they actually have no idea what an HSA is. So we put it there for those people who do want HSAs, but give it a couple seconds more. Just a recap of what's coming. So today is HSA day. Tomorrow, I'm going to just tell you about my process. Last week, Sam was on here, my assistant, talking about what she's getting ready and preparing, and sent that out. And I know some of you were like, oh my goodness, look at everything she does. Just remember, that was developed. It took 3 years to get to that. So this will be her 4th open enrollment. I'm like, my first open enrollment was a pile of files sitting next to me that were not in alphabetical order, that when somebody would come in, I would just pop them on my lap and try and go through them. So, we have it streamlined now, and it's taken every year. We've just gotten better and better. So it's not that we expect you to do, be the most streamlined your first open enrollment, but I wanted you to think about that, what's going to happen. So next week, I'm just going to kind of tell you my process, take it, edit, make it yours, go, yeah, that won't work for me. I'm going to do it this way, whatever it is that you want. I like ideas to feed off of. Then on October 19th, we're going to talk about classes. Should you offer a class? Should you do Zoom? I actually do both. It's something to think about. You could still do Zoom yet this year. It's harder to announce that you're going to do an in-person class, but I do this for current clients. I don't do the class for new people. This is for my current clients to make sure that they're comfortable in knowing what to do. You certainly could do it for new people. I know there's plenty of people on here and others that have gotten very good at hosting classes and getting clients from that. But what I'm going to be talking about is really more for current clients. And then the last week is going to be kind of a potluck. It's going to be lots of questions, just kind of one-offs, last minute things. It'll kind of be your last chance to ask me something. So that's the renew. Yep, that's my OE pre-process. So that's how the renewals are going to go over. That's what I'm going to talk about. So it's kind of how I'm doing it. In conjunction with the new CMS regulations, with the forms. I mean, I know people are still trying to find the forms and understand the forms. So I'm going to go over that next week. So that'll be the renewals, the open enrollment process. Not open enrollment for new people, but really the renewals, especially if you're going to have new people. I mean, a new person, whether it's right now or whether it's, in May, it's the same. It's the renewals. Somebody's asking if anyone else has a bad connection. On my end, it looks good. So Chris is shaking his head no. And then that'll be the last one. I can take a survey now and see if you guys still want to do this in January, or I can just send it out and say, here we are picking it up in January. Kind of up to you guys. I don't want to host it if nobody's showing up. But if there's still a need for it, I'm happy to do it. I might redo some of the ones we did before. I have a few other guest speakers who want to come in there. I see a couple people saying yes and head shakes. As always, it's nice to see your face because it makes me feel like I'm not talking to myself. I'm letting a few more people in, but we're going to get to it. We are going to talk about HSAs, and I'm going to actually do a PowerPoint. If you've seen my other YouTube videos, I do make YouTube videos for clients. This is kind of coming from that. I did update a little bit for 2024, but so when I say you, it's because I'm saying this to clients. I don't mean you specifically, but for your clients. So let's share this. We'll see if we can get it to work right. New computer is always weird. Share screen. Okay. And I have a button to tell me when things are happening, because once I start screen sharing, I couldn't tell when people were trying to log in. So, all right. So can everybody see that? It says HSA. All right. So HSA, what it stands for, it's one of those acronyms that we are, as agents, are really bad at just throwing out there and thinking everybody knows what it means. But it stands for Health Savings Account. It's often sometimes used, you can also see HDHP, which stands for High Deductible Health Plan. So you'll see that HS for an HDHP kind of used interchangeably, but in reality, the HSA is the savings account you open at the bank. And an HDHA is the name of the High Deductible Health Plan. So there are, oh, it is working. Okay. There's 4 tax advantages to a health savings account. So it's, if somebody is going to get into a high deductible health plan and have an HSA, whether they had it through a group or they're coming up with you, there are some advantages, and they're tax advantages. One, their contributions are 100% deductible. So that part is nice because they don't have to worry about, you know, the reason I got into this was because of the cliff, that income cliff, and they could put that HSA money in and it deducted their taxable income. And once somebody's retired, it's like the only thing that really is 100% tax deductible. You can't put money in a retirement fund when you're retired. I mean, you're done. You can't add to it. If you're not self-employed, you're not going to have something you can deduct. So an HSA is one of the only things that's deductible, even when you're done being retired, done working and you're retired and you've got nothing else. Or people have been using it and they like it. There's a whole group of people now that make money off of getting interest in HSAs, investing those into types of plans, because the interest is also tax-free. The money withdrawn from it is used for medical expenses, and there's a huge list, and that money is then tax-free. It really is tax-free for life. It's the only thing that I know of that's tax-free for life. You put money in, it's a tax deduction. When you use it appropriately, you never have to pay taxes on it. You can pay for your deductible, for max out of pockets, for co-pays, for eyeglasses. There's quite a few over-the-counter medications. You can use it to put in shower bars if you need to do that. You can buy things to help modify your home if somebody now needs a wheelchair or is, you know, using a cane. You can buy medical equipment. There's a huge list of what you can do. In fact, you can even buy a bed if your chiropractor's like, the reason your back hurts so bad is because you need a new bed. You can use HSA money for that. And it's tax-free. So it can earn interest. It sits at the bank and it earns interest. The interest is tax-free. And that part is kind of nice. To be eligible for an HSA plan, though, you have to be enrolled in an HSA qualified plan. Just because it has a high deductible does not mean it's a government qualified plan. Because, you know, come on, the government is going to be the one who's going to say what you can and can't do with this, right? I mean, they're not just willy-nilly giving you tax-free money. This is the IRS we're talking about, right? So it has to be a qualified plan. And there are a lot of misunderstandings about it by accountants, by insurance agents. And they're like, oh yeah, you have a high deductible. Feel free to go put that money in and we'll just take it off. I've seen accountants, they have not asked, can you show me that your plan is qualified? Instead, they've said, what's your deductible? And the person says, oh, my deductible is 10,000. And they're like, yep, that's a high deductible plan. Go put some money in your account and we'll deduct that. That is not how it works. So it has to be an HSA qualified plan. The IRS is the one who's going to dictate what that is and isn't. My notes are being weird. The qualifications are you can't be in another plan. So you can't be in a high deductible plan at your job and another high deductible plan at your spouse's job. They're only going to let you be in one. And so you can't be in two of them. You're not enrolled in Medicare. Once you are in Medicare, even if it's just Part A, you cannot contribute to an HSA. And if you've received benefits through like TRICARE, if you're on Medicaid, you're not in an HSA qualified plan. None of those, TRICARE and Medicaid, are not high deductible plans. And you have not received it from the VA, right? If you're in the VA, not qualified. And you can't be claimed as a dependent. So that's for the young ones, somebody who's 23 and wants to be in an HSA so they can start saving money, but their parents are still claiming them. They cannot be in an HSA plan, even at work. So if any of you do group, they cannot be claimed by another person on their taxes. And it has to be a qualifying high deductible health plan. None of the short-term policies is a qualified plan. Just right there. I don't care if you put somebody on a $10,000 deductible. That is not a qualified high deductible plan. It's just a high deductible plan. Right? It's not a qualified one. All high deductible plans are ACA compliant. So they're either on the marketplace getting tax credits or you're buying them direct from the carrier, but none of them are the alternative options. I don't care how high the deductible is. So the federal rule says there is always a deductible that must be met before the insurance company pays anything other than preventative services. So preventative services are still 100% free, but you're gonna have a deductible. There's no copays. That's one of the easiest ways to know if it's a high deductible plan. All services, including office visits, full cost of prescription drugs, are subject to a deductible. So you pay 100% of the cost until you reach the deductible. And then it could be a copay after that. I see that in group policies more, but usually it's a co-insurance. So it's going to be 50%, 20%, something like that. But you're going to have to put some skin in the game first. The government's like, we're giving you tax-free money to pay for medical expenses. We want you to put some skin in the game. We want you to actually spend some money first. Once you've reached it, that deductible, you are either going to have a co-insurance, or in the typical bronze HSA, you've also reached your max out of pocket. Now it's 100% covered. It has a lower max out of pocket than a traditional non-HSA plan. So if everybody knows the high deductible next year is going to be $9,000, or the max out of pocket's $9,400, the HSA will be lower than that. So that's one of the advantages as well. So I'm going to compare. Now, these are just two plans. This is from last year, a carrier and my company that carries both of them. One has a $6,850 deductible. Whoops, it moved. Sorry about that. And one has an $8,500 deductible. And those of you familiar with Sherpa will recognize this. This is my Health Sherpa, screenshot. They both have high deductible health plans, or high deductibles. But if you look on the right, it's got copays for regular doctor, specialist, generic drugs, while the other one says no charge after deductible, because the max out of pocket and the deductible are the same. But on the right side, same thing, right? 8,500, you would think that was an HSA plan, but it's not. If you start digging in, they both have it, but only the person in this plan that says HSA at the top can actually contribute money as a tax deduction. Most of the plans will have either HSA next to it or HDHP. It'll put it right in the name to make it clear. When you're searching through Health Sherpa, if somebody really wants that HSA plan, there's a button down near the bottom on the left where you can just click that and only see HSA qualified plans. But they're not trying to sneak it, they're trying to make it obvious, but this is so you can explain it to your client. And I get people coming from work who are like, my insurance is crappy, it was really cheap and it didn't pay for anything. And 9 times out of 10, they were in an HSA plan and they didn't know how it worked. They just knew that it was a high deductible. So this was last year. So the comparison of 2022 and 2023, this is the contribution limits. So the government, of course, is not letting you put $100,000 in as tax-free money. They're going to limit what you can do. So in 2022, a single person could put 3,650. Oops. And then in 23, they could do 3,850. So it was an extremely small increase. It only went up $200. And most people had a $7,500 deductible. So down here at the bottom, this is what the government says, the insurance companies, that's the max they're allowed to charge, $7,500. So the traditional plan has a $9,100 max out of pocket, but the HSA was $7,500. Now, some carriers were a little bit less. We saw $7,100 on a few of ours, but they could go up to $7,500. The smallest amount, there has to be a deductible of some sort. They're not, there's no such thing as a $0 deductible. So they're saying the minimum it has to be 1,500. So the government says at the minimum, somebody needs to pay at least 1,500 before the insurance kicks in. You will not see that very often. That's a platinum or a gold HSA plan, but they're usually so expensive, it doesn't make any sense. But I would look. Every once in a while, you'll have a carrier that'll come in with a gold plan where their max out of pocket's 3,000, and that's it. They're done. And there are people who would rather just pay a higher amount, have less out of pocket. Go ahead and look at that. For this year, this was the largest increase of HSA contributions allowed since they started the HSAs. So it's going from 3,850 to 4,150. That's a huge jump. That's the biggest they've done. I mean, usually it's $200. It's nothing nothing to take home and get excited about. There is a $1,000 catch up for anybody over 55, so they can add an extra 1,000, so they could do 5,150. And the max out of pocket is jumping also quite a bit. That's the bad part. It was under 8,000, and now they can do $8,050. Now, an HSA account at the bank, you have a great year, and let's say you max it out, you put your 3,000 in or whatever, and you don't use it, maybe a couple things, it's your money. It stays in that account. This is not a flex spending account. It's at your bank. You get to use it. The next year, you have another healthy year, so you can contribute another 3,000, 4,000, and then you can keep doing that, and you can keep contributing. And there's no limit to how much you can have in there. There's just a limit to how much you can contribute each year, as long as you're enrolled in an HSA qualified plan. Now, I don't know if any of you are self-business owners that are trying to find a way to reduce your taxable income. This is one of them. I'm in an HSA qualified plan. It's a brilliant way to reduce your taxable income and save for future medical expenses. It's not something that, if you have a lot of prescriptions, but don't go to the doctor a lot of people don't like HSAs because you're paying the full cost. But if you're healthy, you don't go to the doctor a lot, an HSA is really nice. And if you are a max out of pocket person, every year you're going to be the max out of pocket. Well, why not go with a lower, less out of pocket and have some tax incentives on it? So that's going to come into here. When does it make sense to enroll somebody in an HSA qualified plan? So they know they're going to have surgery or hospital stay in the next year. They're going to reach their max out of pocket. They know it's going to happen. Maybe they've got those really expensive medications. We know they're out there. Somebody's going to reach their max out of pocket in 2-3 months. Well, let me put you in an HSA qualified plan so that you're not paying $9,400, but you're paying $8,050. And if you're going to pay that money, because you're going to have to pay your expenses, you might as well open an HSA account so at least half of that $8,000 is a deduction. They don't have to open an HSA. They don't have to claim it as a tax deduction, but if you're going to spend it anyways, why wouldn't you? If they already have an HSA account and they want to keep contributing, there are people who have HSA accounts from their employer plan and are coming to you, or they're self-employed, or they had an accountant who got them into thinking about HSAs. If they already have an HSA account, they may still want to keep it. Now, I've had some who are like, I want to keep it. I have an HSA, but then they have like no income, right? They really low income. They qualify for these amazing CSRs. Well, then I go, well, you could do an HSA, but your out of pocket's going to be 8,000. Or here's the CSR where it's 3,000 out of pocket. Most people stop contributing to their HSA and take the lower one, but not everyone. It's their choice and their options, which brings up something to remember. The HSAs that you might see in the silver, if there is a CSR, they no longer qualify as an HSA if they're in that 100 and the 200 that percentile. So if they're in the bottom two CSRs, we're like, hey, you can get this HSA and your max out of pocket's $500. The government's not going to let you do that. So be aware of that. It's really makes sense if you never go to the doctor. I never go to the doctor. Well, then why don't you have an HSA plan? Even if you put $100, hey, that's $100 you're not getting taxed on. Young and healthy, and they want to save for the future. If you've got some young, healthy people and they're business savvy, they're money savvy. Scott's having a problem with flies or something over there. Did you get it? If they're young and healthy and trying to save money, an HSA is brilliant. You can retire with $30,000 in an HSA account. So HSAs are great. Self-employed and they need some more deductions, and you always meet your max out of pocket. Your client who is a max out of pocket person, seriously, look at an HSA. They get to it faster. That's kind of a negative thing, especially prescription people. If they've got a $4,000 prescription and they got to go to the pharmacy and pick it up in the next 4 months and it's $1,000, $1,000. Do they have $1,000 to pay for that prescription for the first 4 months and then be done? Maybe, if they don't, then maybe they can't do an HSA. They got to do the traditional one because the traditional one's going to get them there, but it's going to take them 8 months to get to the max out of pocket. But it's something that I will present to people who reach their max out of pocket. When doesn't it make sense to enroll in an HSA? So in my area, and they're growing more popular in other states, is when there's a plan that has no deductible. With the high deductible of $6,850 versus nothing, and you just go to the doctor a couple of times, you may not want to do an HSA because they'd rather just pay the $30 to go to the doctor, not pay, I don't know what the bill is, $200-300. If they have lots of prescriptions, I've had quite a few people that they don't want to pay the full cost of their prescriptions. It's one thing if it's 1 or 2, right? Good RX, but when somebody hands you a list and it's not expensive meds, it's just a lot of generics and tier 2s, maybe they don't want an HSA. Lots of doctor's appointments, but nothing major. So doctor's appointments here, $30, $90. Surgery, max out of pocket, If they've never had an HSA plan and they're 62 years old, they're probably not going to want an HSA plan. Unless, and we'll talk about this next year, if it happens, the income cliff comes back. So it is scheduled to come back for 2025. We'll find out if it does, but that is how I had to learn about HSAs for people who just made $2,000-3,000 over the income cliff to qualify for tax credit. If that does not come back, it won't be as popular, but if it comes back, it's going to be very popular again because it's the only way I could get people to qualify for tax credit. And if you really want to know what the cost is before you go to the doctor, an HSA is not for you because you have no idea what it's going to cost until you get the bill versus a copay plan. The copay is showing you here's what the cost is when you go to the doctor. So here's some advantages and disadvantages of HSAs. Advantage, you can invest the money in a way that has triple tax advantages because it's reducing your taxable income. When you spend it, it's tax-free, and it's helping you save money. There's usually a lower premium, greater flexibility with how the money can be spent. The money rolls over year after year. So it's not one and done, it's your money. Anyone in the household can use it for medical expenses. So that's important to know. Let's just say you got a husband-wife situation and the husband's on Medicare and she's in an HSA. The money put into the HSA, he can use for his medical expenses. It's not just hers. They're not saying only the person enrolled in a high deductible plan can use this. Anybody in the family can use the money put in that HSA. And one thing I wanted to mention where I talked about flexibility of how the money can be spent, and I need to put this on that previous slide. The other person that this makes sense for is the person who does not go to traditional doctors. They go to acupuncturists, they go to neuropathic doctors, they're going to alternative doctors. Well, put the money in the HSA for your just in case, buy an HSA plan in case you end up in the hospital, but the money they put in an HSA account can be used for the alternative doctors, for massage, for chiropractics, for all kinds, you know, any kind of MD they can be used for. I've got probably 6 or 7 clients that's why they're in an HSA, because they do not go to a traditional doctor. This way they can use tax-free money to go to those doctors. So lots of money to be, lots of qualifying expenses. In fact, there's a website, a person has made a website that says HSA qualified like products. They even have a section called surprisingly qualified. So it's really easy to figure out where you can spend your money. The disadvantages can be higher out-of-pocket healthcare costs. You know, if I go to the doctor once on an HSA, I'm probably going to spend $200. If I go to the doctor once on a copay plan, I'm spending $30, right? 20% early withdrawal penalty for non-medical expenses. So if somebody has money in an HSA and they just decide to pull it out because it's their money and they can, there will be a 20% withdrawal penalty. And then they also have to pay taxes on it. So, because they were getting it tax-free. So they'll have to pay the taxes on it and they'll get a penalty. Once they turn 65, there is no penalty for taking the money out. But if you take it out for non-medical expenses, you pay taxes on it. Prescription costs can be a lot that first year, unknown costs at the doctors, and you need to be able to contribute that money and leave it alone. You know, it's not a backup plan. It's not a savings plan for a catastrophic situation. You know, if you're not able, your clients aren't able to put that away, it's probably not a good fit. All right, I do see that there's some questions. I'm going to stop share so I can see my chat. It's a little bit easier. And I will also tell you, so HSAs, I've had different clients do it different ways. One client, she has just enough money in there to keep her bank happy, whatever it is that they want it to be in there. And she doesn't contribute for tax purposes because she doesn't have a lot of money. But when she goes to the doctor, she gets her bill, it says 175. She goes to the bank, puts 175 in the HSA and then pays for it. And then at the end of the year, whatever she contributed for her, just the doctor visit she used, that is her tax deduction. Okay. Other people go, I've got money on January 1st, because they're going to be in the HSA the whole year. They contribute the entire year's worth. They just do it in one lump sum. They take it from their savings account and they stick it in there. You can take it from a 401k. Your grandmother can give it to you. The IRS doesn't actually care where you get that tax money or that money that you put in the HSA. If you sell layers like I talked about, like I do, gap policies, accident policies, indemnity, something that's paying cash directly to a client, they can take that cash that was given to them, put it in the HSA, and then pay their bill. And they just got a double thing, a tax deduction of money they didn't even have to come up with, and they got their bill paid. So there's some advantages to HSAs, but it can be confusing. If somebody really doesn't know what you're doing or understand an HSA, it may not be worth telling them. It may not be worth taking that time to discuss all this. But if you can find an accountant and can tell them about, hey, by the way, I have this gap policy that pays 50% of somebody's outpatient, it pays 100% if they go in the hospital, and they can put that in an HSA, you're your accountant's best friend, because accountants love HSAs. Financial advisors love HSAs because it's a great, very easy tax deduction. It is an honor system. The government doesn't check. They don't say, send us proof that you have a high deductible health plan, until they ask you, hey, we're going to do an audit. Show us that you were in a high deductible health plan. So it is an honor system. There are many people out there through, I believe, no fault of their own, that have contributed to HSAs because they were in a $10,000 short-term policy, or they signed up for a $9,100, the cheap bronze for $9,100. Their accountant goes, oh, you have a $9,100, let's put money in an HSA. If they get audited by the IRS, they're going to have to, one, pay back the taxes, and they'll get penalized for trying to contribute to something that's not tax-free. And you have to show that you used it. So you get a card. I mean, it's a different color. It's a light blue card from my HSA account right from my bank. And I keep my receipts on there, and I only use it for that. So when it pulls up, it's going to show Walmart and Walgreens drug deductible. It's never going to show Walmart. I don't go to that store, but it's going to show the medical expenses. Aurora, I have a medical bill that I just pay monthly that I just have it come off of there. You can keep your receipts and save them. Some people pay it as it's happening, right? So I have a bill, I pay the bill. The other thing I had is a client, they don't actually pay their bills with it. They just keep track of all their bills. And their plan is when they turn 65, they're going to total up all the medical bills, which is after 10 years, and they're just going to pull that out, and it's their money to do with what they want. And in the meantime, it's just sitting in the HSA earning interest. So they're not pulling the money as they use it. They're kind of saving it, and then they've got all their receipts so they can just pull out a huge chunk when they need to and not have a penalty. So HSAs can be, there's a lot of flexibility with it, but they have to be enrolled in an HSA plan. All right, can we withdraw at 65? Yep, you can withdraw at 65, but it's still supposed to be used for medical expenses. So you don't get a penalty for withdrawing it, but you'll have to pay taxes if you're not using it from not using it for medical expense. What's the difference from HSA and HDHP, high deductible health plan? That's just two different terminologies. One actually stands for the savings account you open at your bank, and one is the name of the qualified plan, but you often see them interchanged. So if it says an HSA qualified plan, that's a high deductible health plan. And the income cliff, for those who are new to the marketplace, was before, if you guys were, I don't even know, yep, here's my federal poverty chart sitting right here. Get really close. So anybody between 100 and 400% of the federal poverty level could get a tax credit. Anybody who made more than $1 over that federal poverty, that 400% of federal poverty level, did not qualify for tax credit. Didn't matter how expensive the plan was. It was the cliff. I mean, we would say, yep, you have until here, and then you fall off, and you do not get a tax credit. That was changed under Biden's administration pretty early on. They used COVID as the excuse. It didn't matter to me. It's something they should have fixed a long time ago. But the cliff is only good, or the cliff has only disappeared until 2025. The actual rules on the book say only people between 100 and 400% of the federal poverty level get a tax credit. It'll be 4 years by the time it comes along, or 5, something like that. So hopefully they will change it permanently, but like I said, to be determined. Jill, in my area, the HSA qualifying health plans are really high premium plans. If the yearly premium is 12 and your savings is a single period, it can't be 12. Oh, your yearly premium is 12,000. So it's not a benefit if you're not getting a tax credit, quite often, to be honest. I mean, why are you going to spend $1,000 a month for your high deductible health plan and you can only put money away? You can only put $4,000 away. It doesn't make sense when you are paying the full cost often. But if you are in a group policy, people come from group, if they're getting a tax credit and they're paying $175 a month, $300 a month, or they're always going to meet their max out of pocket anyways. Well, if I'm paying $1,000 or $1,000 and one I can at least have some tax deduction and one I can't, that's where sometimes that HSA makes sense. The bronze, I don't know. We have one company in our area that has a gold HSA with a $3,000 deductible max out of pocket. And we have sold that to a few people. Typically somebody younger, because it's the difference between the bronze and the gold, it makes sense. We do the math. We're like, all right, you're going to spend this much per month for that gold plan times 12. and add the 3,000. So worst case scenario, this is what it'll cost you. And then we'll take the bronze one, whatever the premium is, times 12, add the max out of pocket, and see which one mathematically makes sense. Sometimes they're even. Well, would you rather pay more each month so that you don't have to pay so much when you go to the doctor, or not? Why do you say the income cliff does not exist? When I did a plan for a family this year, they made too much. That's not a cliff. So remember, Arlene, there's no cliff. There's no, you made $1 and you qualify and now you don't. The tax credit is determined by the second cheapest silver plan in the county for the people that you're entering. So their zip code, their ages, and their income. If that second cheapest silver plan costs more than 8.5% of their income, they get a tax credit. If it already is less than 8.5% of their income, they do not get a tax credit. That's not a cliff. That's actually pretty fair. You make too much money to get a tax credit. Not you make $1 too much. Because it was literally somebody, I mean, the year that it was pretty horrific because the tax credit was like $2,000 a month. And I was telling people, under no circumstances can you go over 64,572. I mean, I had that, I had that number memorized in my, because if they made 64,000, they got $2,000 of tax credit. When they made 65,000, they got 0 tax credit, and they had to pay back that $2,000 per month back. It's an all or nothing. That's the cliff. You either qualify or you don't. Now, if the cost is more than 8.5%, you get a tax credit. If you make too much money and the plan is less than 8.5, you don't get a tax credit. So it's not a cliff. It's actually, I think, a pretty fair system. It's a percentage. You're paying roughly the same percent as anybody else. And if you make $1 million, well, then guess what? It's a lot less than 8.5. If you make 200,000, it's probably a lot less than 8.5. But if the plans go up, in fact, you see that across there, everybody's national coverage, the plans are going up, the plans are going up. And all that means is more people will qualify for tax credits. The plan, if you make 50,000 this year and you make 50,000 next year and the rates go up 500%, it's irrelevant to you. You're going to pay the same amount. So if you're really still not understanding that, that is what my classes are for. The sessions that I created, the classes, I go into much more deep dive into these things, and I talk about the tax credit. Because if you can wrap your head around that, how people qualify, then you can tell your clients, because it's kind of confusing. Oh, Jill just read that. So she said, for those who haven't purchased my class yet, it's very helpful on this topic. I go into a lot of details on this topic, HSAs, and some other things. Natasha says, different topic. Does anyone know the SEP cutoff in Florida for what storm, and what can I get that answer? Right now, there's no SEP for anything particular. If you say somebody lost insurance, they can get it. So Florida is not any different than any other federal state. If you say somebody lost coverage, the system just gives it to them right now. Expect that to be turned on sometime next year. Technically, May of 2024 is when the Medicaid rollback is done. Now, we haven't seen the SEP documents working correctly in 3 years. When my one agent who's been here for 3 years, the plan just enrolled. I mean, I think we entered like 2 SEP documents in the last 3 years. There's a button somewhere at healthcare.gov. Somebody in the background's going, ha, 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 and they haven't pushed the button. But someday somebody's going to go, we should probably put that button back on. So if somebody's never had coverage, lost their coverage in March, the system doesn't care if they, if you say they lost coverage, or if they say they lost coverage and they do it themselves. The system doesn't care. In fact, I had an agent, they are an ex-agent of a carrier who's now trying to do this on his own, who called me and goes, healthcare.gov, the marketplace, they're just enrolling everybody. And I went, yes, they are. If you don't want to enroll your client, you can tell them to call healthcare.gov. 99% chance they're going to get enrolled. And if they didn't like that first answer, they could probably call back and they'll get enrolled. So now we are really close to the open enrollment time period where anybody can sign up. Short terms are totally a legit thing. Somebody hasn't had coverage and they need it and they're like, I probably should get coverage. Hey, you can sign them up for 2.5 months between now and open enrollment. Short terms can work. And if you're not sure how those work, I had a different class that talked about that earlier. So you can't bypass the time frame. So you have to say they lost coverage in the last 60 days. If you do it earlier or later than that, it won't work. Like I said, the system isn't smart. There's lots of SEPs for Medicare and Medicaid and things like that, but ACA just is what it is. If they currently have insurance on their job, but it's too expensive, can they switch to ACA? Yes, but they're starting over. So I wouldn't necessarily do it now because there's only 3 months left of the year. But remember, you have to use the calculator. A client can say, it's too expensive for me. But the system says, does it cost more or less than 9.12% of your income? There are calculators online where you can run that in and it will say, yes, they qualify. And sometimes the person's insurance, the employee's insurance is perfectly fine. It's the family that's not affordable. So use those family calculators out there to see if they end their employer coverage, they would have an SEP because their employer coverage ended. But I don't know that I would recommend that to anybody when there's only 2 months left that they can get on the marketplace. But maybe for 21 or 2024 for January, they could do that. But again, you have to check that out. Now, again, my advice is always FFM states. It is not state exchanges. So state exchanges will ask for things. They're different. They run things and they do care. And they have smart systems and they work differently. Healthcare.gov does not ask for this stuff. They don't care. So what's my favorite calculator site? I like the KKM or whatever family. I really like them. There's a couple of them out there. Here, I can even pull it up. FFM family or CAM. I always forget what it is. I'm gonna have to find it and reach out to you. I have it saved somewhere, but I had it on my old computer and now of course it's not there. And those are pretty nice. I think it's KKM. I don't know. Somebody here probably knows what I'm talking about. But those calculator sites are pretty, I mean, I haven't seen them. Not that I've done side-by-side comparisons on them, but I haven't seen any that were wrong. So if you look up family calculator, that you're usually pretty accurate and you can just punch it in. If you sign someone up on the first day of open enrollment, when does coverage begin? It starts on 1/1. So if you're signing somebody up on November 1st, their coverage is going to start for January 1st. In fact, the system is automatically going to change everything to 2024. Pay attention. If you need somebody who needs coverage for November or December of 2023, you're going to have to switch it. You're going to have to make sure that you look at the right year because it's going to automatically change everything to 2024. My personal preference, because we have a lot of people who retire last couple months and then they need it for November, December, and then they need 2024. My personal preference is to enroll them in 2023 first. Get that done. Make the payment. Then there's a button that'll say renew. You can just click that button. All their information is in there and it's much easier. But if you do 2024 first and then go back and do 2023, you have to enter all their information in twice. You have to actually, their name, their address, their phone number, all that stuff. So do 23 first, make the payment, get them in the system, and then go in, and then you can hit there's a button on Sherpa that says renew, and you can just, their information will translate into 2024. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama is not offering referrals to Health Sherpa. Can we assist them? You can do it. I've got there's a couple carriers. Health Sherpa's finally not giving referrals to companies that won't give them referrals, which has taken them a long time. I got a referral for a company that I know full well did not pay Health Sherpa. So it's fair. I mean, Health Sherpa's not getting any money. They're not paying you. Just do it. Now, if it's something that's like, wow, this is the only carrier that's in my area that works, then you got to talk to them. You got to figure out what you can do. I know it's almost always the Blue Cross Blue Shield ones of the different states that you have to worry about. Florida, I believe, is a captive one, so see if you can find an agent who is working for them and say, hey, if I enroll people or send them to you, you want to pay me $5 or something. I mean, I do it for free if it's something I can't get paid for, but it's harder when that's like a bigger chunk of your book of business. You can still enroll them in Health Sherpa. Are you doing new through Health Sherpa? I do through Health Sherpa. Yep. I click that button on Health Sherpa and I send the renewal out to everybody all at the same time. And I tell them you're getting it on November 1st. I send it out immediately, first thing in the morning on November 1st. And I let them do it. So we'll talk about that. That's next week. I can't show you 100% how it works, but I am going to show you. I use Health Sherpa as much as possible. As much of the stuff that you can get them to do, the better. So you have to renew a current customer who does not make changes. Yes, that's in previous ones. And again, I will talk about that next week. This is not Medicare. This is not group insurance. This isn't your dental where they can just keep it till they don't want it anymore. You need to touch them or have them touch it. Everything stays the same with them, but the system and the market they are in does not stay the same ever. There's changes. Now, maybe their plan is fine. You can't rely on that. So, and they will use the tax credits from healthcare.gov will use the most recent tax credit or tax form they have, which was 2022 to determine your 2024's tax credit. Why would you want that? Rarely is that work. So you do need to touch base. Well, we're out a little bit early. I will send my PowerPoint with you when I send the link out to the class. If you want to rewatch it again, or if you just want to look through those PowerPoints really quick, I will send those out. Thank you, everybody. As always, I really appreciate you coming in and hanging out with me Thursday morning. Have a great rest of the week. Somebody's trying to come in. Oh, well.